What's going on, guys? It's Shake here. Today I'm going to outline some Web3 marketing strategy for you. I've got a lot of questions about this lately, and I'm just going to give you like a high level to kind of demystify a lot of what people think about marketing, right? And a lot of the misconceptions with it. So made this nice slide presentation today. Hope you guys enjoy the more structured educational content. Let's get right into it though. So I did want to kind of qualify myself a little bit in terms of like what I've done. And so I am the founder of Cyber Samurai NFT. It's a project on Solana. We raised 2.2 million at mint. We've done 50,000 sold volume. Our follower number is 12K. It's not a huge follower number, but it's organic. We've only done a couple giveaways ever, as you can see by the engagement rate of 5%. And so if you Google this, you get different answers, but essentially 5% engagement rate is really good for Twitter. So now my personal account, again, organic, 7.5K, 5% engagement rate, almost 60,000 impressions per day. This month has been a lot because I did have a couple things go really viral, but I know a little bit about Twitter marketing. I spent a ton of time on crypto Twitter. I've done marketing for Cyber Samurai as well as some other projects. That's kind of where this is from, just what I've learned, from this, going throughout those mints. So first off, I'm going to do a couple basic principles. So this is just things to kind of like keep in your mind at a high level when you're doing anything. This isn't really strategy. This is just like principles, rules, or not even rules, but just, things to keep in mind, mental models, whatever. First one is from Bunjil, who's really good at Twitter marketing. He runs an NFT project and his personal account has a lot of followers. He said, be violently online. This is the most important element. And at the end of the day, guys, the consistency is what is probably the most important, right? Is just showing up constantly and like being online, being in Twitter spaces, on interviews and podcasts, being in Twitter DMs and group chats and Discord, whether you're building your personal brand or, you're marketing for a company, separate brand. This is super, super, super important. And I think a lot of people don't realize that like if you're just consistently online and creating content, like how far things can go just if that was the only thing you took away from this video. So that's Bunjil. John Lay, he said, this is in a response, he said, best advice to young artists, don't try so hard to be original that you forget how to be yourself. And so I put those. This is presence. This is authenticity. So yeah, he's basically saying be yourself. And from my conversation with John, like this is something he hits home a lot. Again, like you're being online a lot, but I think I see a lot of people fall into the trap of like trying to do something the way that someone else did it or another project did it, like word for word, copy their strategy. And I think it just doesn't work for like in the long term, in my experience. The attention has the leverage. So this is Gary Vee. He's obviously respected for his marketing skills outside of Web3. And he says the attention has the leverage. Everything else is commodity. So it's really all about creating things that get people's attention. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. And then this is something that I think is specifically really, really important in Web3. The rest of the stuff applies outside of it, but is activation. And I use the word activation as in community, like activating your community. So here's a quote from Frank from DGods. It's the #1 project on Solana. They actually have the #1 and the #2 project, I believe. He says, I was never a fan of writing the lore. Why would I? The community writes the story. It's our job to tell it in a cool way, which I thought was a really powerful quote. Now that we have a couple of those principles, laid out, and again, presence, authenticity, attention, and activation. And this one being the one that's like more specific to Web3, I think. But all these apply outside. That's kind of the principles framework, right? The foundation for building a marketing strategy. Let's get into the actual strategy. So I think this is the thing that people, in my experience, a lot of people just have no idea how to do this. Like, what is strategy, right? And so I'm going to kind of map it out for you. And again, this is just really high level. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to like go in depth into each one of these things and show you examples. I'm going to make it its own video for each of these, but this is just like the intro to this kind of free course I'm hoping to put together. Yeah, with strategy, brand building, discovery, goal setting, planning, and execution. But the first being brand building. And so this is the thing that I see in NFTs a lot of people skip. I skipped it too with my first project. This is kind of a rough timeline for you in like order of how I think you should do things. But basically you want to get the name down. You want to get the mission statement, like what is the core philosophy of this brand. Your logo and brand mark. So for those who don't know, a brand mark is essentially like the more complex logo that you take parts from to use in different parts of your branding. Brand guidelines is like what colors do you use, what font do you use, what voice do you use. You find comparables to other companies or other people that you feel like represent your company well. And then trademark and legal, you want to get your trademark down. You want to pay for that, essentially. I think this part is pretty straightforward, but again, I see people skip on like some of these things, right? Any individual one of these things could really kind of skew your brand strategy if you skip it. It's worth paying really good people, like experts, to do these things, in my opinion. We do the brand building, right? You have these assets, you have an idea of like how you want to voice yourself, right? Or let's say that you're coming in, let's say that you have an agency or you're an employee and you get hired by another company. They probably already have all that stuff down. And so this sometimes will be the first step if you're like if you're running an agency or you got hired. It will be discovery. And again, important to get this part right before you really take any like steps and execute if possible. It's good to kind of do this. Now, discovery phase is a process in which information is collected and analyzed about the project, such as the intended audience and market. So I put a couple points here. Again, I'll do a full video about just this. But the first one is like prioritize, like what are you optimizing for? So if you're an NFT project with an upcoming mint, a lot of people, they're optimizing for like, we want to sell out this mint. Like that is like, if we had to say one goal, that's the goal. Or maybe you're launching a tech product. Maybe you don't have an NFT. Hey, we want to get as many users as possible. It could be, we want to make as much money as possible if you're like selling some other kind of product, right? But I think you got to get that, what are you optimizing for down? Because everything else will fall into place around that. Who's the target user or target customer and what's their profile? So in NFTs, right, you might say like, hey, our target group is like NFT degens, right? Like NFT traders. And so you would want to get some profiles of like the archetype of that person, right? Get those together and start kind of like categorizing what are the details, what makes this person tick, and then review brand voice and brand guidelines. We already talked about that a little bit. Once you've really gone in depth with the discovery, again, this is just, I'm having one slide for each of these things, but they all have their own nuances. You start setting goals. And so one would be define KPIs. Again, if what you're optimizing for is selling out the mint, you want to have like KPIs, like we sell this many NFTs. And that stands for key performance indicator. Such a corny business term, but define the KPIs. And then the other side of it is qualitative results. So this is an example could be like, hey, if we do a really good job marketing this brand, this is like the kind of thing people will say about us, right? So like I'm marketing for a client right now, and some of the qualitative results that we have is like, we want people to think this account is like Wendy's, and we want people to think it's fun to follow our account and say things like, oh, this account's so funny, and like they're just in tune with the community and they're fun to talk to, right? Good qualitative results to have in mind. Okay, planning, the part that I'm probably the worst at out of all these things, but that's important. And again, it's important, like if you're running an agency, again, or if you are a founder, if you're bad at any of these things, I think it's worth it to pay people who are really good at it. So like for planning, I have other people that usually do the like hardcore planning stuff for me and tracking projects. Just thought it was worth noting. But yeah, planning, content schedule. So especially in Web3, it's going to be hard to have like a really in-depth content schedule going weeks and weeks out because things move really fast and you want to be current. But having some kind of framework for how you're going to post content, like what types, how often, right? Twitter Spaces and podcasts, especially important for NFT marketing, but I'd say for anything. You want to figure out, hey, do we have a weekly show? Do we have a daily show? Like how often are we hosting them? How often are we joining them? Are we going to sponsor other shows? What does that cost? Who are the people to contact about that? Good stuff to start considering. And then community management. What are your practices for dealing with DMs? Are you going to have your DMs open? A lot of people will hit you up to collab or promote. So that's a choice you got to make. Are we going to have our DMs open? Then, yeah, how often are you engaging with replies and comments, right? So this would be something that, sometimes your social media manager's doing, or you have a community manager who's specifically dealing with replies, comments, and DMs. I think it's just good to have a practice around that. Like, who are we saying yes to? If you're the founder and the CEO, people should know when to tell you about a DM, and they should know that like they should be saving you time, right? And so filtering out most of the shitty DMs. So we have that. Okay, execution. So there's no secret. Focus on growing your audience, delivering a great experience. This is actually from something that was about growth from Chamath, but it's basically was saying you focus on like getting people in the door, giving them a great experience, and then repeating that again and again. And I think it's a really good framework for anything, but for your content, right? Your community management, you want to give people a really good experience of joining your Discord and following you on Twitter and DMing you, and like repeat that experience as many times as possible. Like, you want to make people entertained, give them value, teach them things, continue doing that with really good quality stuff. Again, consistency over perfection. So going back to Bunjo's point, like, you just have to be violently online. I would say that this is the next point. Nobody will remember your misses. They'll remember your wins. This is something that I kind of came up with. I don't know. Other people have said it for sure. But like on Twitter, you can sit there with your team and like think of a good meme or think of funny video you should make, or like a cool promotional, animated video or whatever. And you can like decide so many times of like, this is a bad idea, but you'll never really know until you post it, right? And a lot of times, like, things that you think are a bad idea, I've found they're the best ideas and people love it, right? So it's because nobody remembers your misses in social media, unless it's like terribly bad and you get canceled. But obviously we're more so talking about like low engagement with the misses. Because of that, you can take shots. Like, that's my approach, at least. Like, just be consistent, do it day in, day out, execute. The last step here, analytics and iteration. This is something that it took us a year to implement for Cyber Samurai, and I really wish we did it sooner. You want to have a process by which you're recording metrics and reporting and reviewing them, right? So for us, we review like floor price, volume, Twitter mentions, engagement, how many people are using our profile pic, things like that. I'll get into that in its own video. That is it, guys. I appreciate you all watching this video. Give a like, a subscribe if you found value in the content, and give me a follow on Twitter. I'll put that in the description below, and watch out for more of these like educational videos about launching and running an NFT project. So much appreciated. I'll see you all on the next one.